the following immediate actions. First, we are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies. The illegal blockades have highlighted the fact that crowdfunding platforms and some of the payment service providers they use are not fully captured under the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Financing Act. Our banks and financial institutions are already obligated to report to the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, or FINTRAC. As of today, all crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use must register with FINTRAC, and they must report large and suspicious transactions to FINTRAC. Their relationships with anyone involved in the illegal blockades and report to the RCMP or CSIS. As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability for actions taken in good faith. Federal government institutions will have a new broad authority to share relevant information with banks and other financial service providers to ensure. This is about following the money. This is about stopping the financing of these illegal blockades. We are today serving notice. If your truck is being used in these illegal blockades, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. Send your semi-trailers home. The Canadian economy needs them to be doing legitimate work, not to be illegally making us all poorer.
Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your boy Odell here for Citadel Dispatch 56. Citadel Dispatch is an interactive live show about Bitcoin, distributed systems, privacy, and open source software. Want to do a huge shout out to the freaks who continue to support the show, keeping it free of ads and sponsors. Dispatch is 100% audience funded, purely focused on actionable Bitcoin discussion. If you want to support the show, you can do so at citadeldispatch.com through either on-chain Bitcoin or Lightning. I also have a paynim, which is easy to remember. It's Odell. If you're using Samurai or Sparrow Wallet, you can support me that way. Another way to support the show is through Podcasting 2.0 apps. I like Fountain Podcast. I like Breeze Wallet. Both of them are very easy to use. You install it on your phone, you search Citadel Dispatch, you press the subscribe button, you load it up with sats. Then you basically choose how many sats per minute you think Dispatch is worth to you. And as you listen, it streams those sats directly to my node. Dispatch is broadcast on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and BitcoinTV.com. All links are at citadeldispatch.com. It's also available in any podcasting app. You just search Citadel Dispatch. So with all that said, obviously the intro there was some really dark times coming out of Canada. They're using financial surveillance and financial control to attack their political enemies, including going after Bitcoiners because of the Bitcoin crowdfunding attempts that are being done. It's a developing situation. Really hate to see it. Uh, Free countries should be supporting monetary choice and monetary freedom. They shouldn't be doing authoritarian dictator style shit. Anyway, with all that said, hopefully we're going to have a lighter, more enjoyable conversation. I have some two great guests joining us today. Before I get there, as always, if you want to participate in the live discussion as we are doing our dispatches, the live audience is a key aspect of this show, makes it very unique. In a lot of ways, I feel like the live audience is a host alongside me, and you guys do make it special. We have a matrix chat, which you can find the link to that at citadeldispatch.com. If you just click Citadel Chat, very easy to install. My favorite client is Element. It'll pass you through the instructions. You install Element, then you re-click the link, and you jump into the chat. And that chat is been popping lately. We have over 700 Bitcoiners in there, even when we're not doing dispatch. There's really, really great, productive Bitcoin conversation happening in there. Okay, so with all that said, I got two great guests here. We have a return guest. We have Keith Mukai. Keith, how's it going?
Hey, happy to be here.
Awesome, and thanks for joining as always. And we have Maritz. Maritz, how's it going?
Really good. Thank you for having me and Keith here.
So the pleasure is all mine. It's been a long time coming. I mean, our main conversation is going to be Spectre Wallet, which is one of my favorite Bitcoin wallets. It's incorporated in the guides that you can find at citadeldispatch.com. I've had some of your team on before, but I've never had you on, so I'm very excited to have a proper discussion with you on air as well. The focus today will be using your own Bitcoin node, using Spectre Wallet, trade-offs to KYC. We have a lot of different topics we're going to cover. But before we do that, let's just start with high level. How do you explain what Spectre Wallet is? What is Spectre Wallet? Why should people care? Why should people consider using it?
The key feature of Spectre is that it really connects your hardware wallets to your Bitcoin core node. And this is basically the key feature. It makes it really easy to use your node and not just to run it, but really use it for verification. So at Spectre, we think sort of in three levels about this. So we think about your node and your verification. You should run your own node. We had early 2021, we had discussions if we should add Electrum support or connect to allow to connect to Electrum servers, and we decided against this. We are sort of node maximalists here and really believe it's way easier to run a Bitcoin core node than many people think. Second is that we want to encourage by default the user to not only run his node, but also use his own wallet infrastructure, which is part of the Bitcoin core node. It's very powerful, especially with HWI and PSBT. You can really make great use of the wallet infrastructure. And this is a point maybe we can touch on later. People shouldn't use the back ends of hardware wallet manufacturers such as Ledger and Trezor, in my opinion, because addresses and XPubs are sent to these infrastructures. And if somebody has your XPub, he knows all about your payment history and also future payments. So this is not good. And finally, the third point is not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So it's about node verification. It's about your wallet infrastructure. So it's privacy, and then your keys, your coins, basically. And of course, we want to work with the standards, be as interoperable as possible. So if a user doesn't like Spectre anymore, he wants to go over to Sparrow, or if somebody doesn't like Sparrow anymore, he can come over to Spectre or to Blue Wallet. So we need to offer this interoperability and avoid as much as possible to lock in any Bitcoiners in their wallet specifications or something like this. Yes.
Awesome.
So that's.
I mean, I think that was a great explanation. I mean, for starters, to the freaks that might be maybe a tiny bit confused, I don't think you are, but just in case, Spectre is a piece of software that you can install on your desktop. You can install it on Linux, Mac, Windows. You install Bitcoin Core alongside it. So Bitcoin Core is the reference client for Bitcoin. It is your own node, and it's a wallet. If when you interact with the Bitcoin network, you are going to need to use a node to interact with the Bitcoin network. If you're not using your own node, you're using someone else's node, and you're trusting them with privacy and verifying the rules of the network. That is what Maurice not insinuated, but alluded to when he was talking about the software that comes with your hardware wallets. If you're using like Ledger Live or Trezor Web Suite, the default software that comes with those wallets, they will use Ledger's node or Trezor's node. So Spectre allows you to interact with pretty much every hardware wallet that is available. And you can interact easily and directly with your own Bitcoin Core node. You can do multi-sig, you can do single sig. It's just a very easy UX for basically interacting directly with your node.
Exactly.
And now I guess, and one of the cool things you added was, and I guess this was probably a little bit before I started using Spectre, so I never actually tried out this feature, is Bitcoin Core is like, can't they just install Spectre Wallet now and then it can automatically download Bitcoin Core as part of that process? Isn't there some kind of integration there?
Yes, so you can download Spectre Desktop, and you have the possibility to run Bitcoin Core in your Spectre Desktop, which is a great feature for people who want to have it packaged. I'm a little bit old school. I have to confess, I still have my Bitcoin Core software running next to my Spectre software because I really like to see. Sometimes I want to go back into the real Bitcoin Core software and see the transactions and everything, the labeling, which the Spectre Desktop is doing on the Bitcoin Core side. So through the communication, through the RPC calls and everything. So I really like this double feature there, this double
But
punch sort of.
from an ease of use point of view, they can just go download Spectre Wallet, and then in that startup guide, that like startup user flow, it basically instructs you to then install Core.
Yes, exactly. So when we first came out, we had it separately, then we packaged it, and it's a lot of people also, like on the bigger page, is like a lot of people think, oh, running a node is very complicated and I need a Raspberry Blitz and or a Get Umbrel and I need all this hardware. It's like, it's not. If you have an old MacBook or an old laptop lying around which is not like completely slow and completely broken, you can basically use this as your node hardware, to say so, and you can install your Bitcoin Core node. You can sync it yourself. We have also a website up which is called Pruned Node Today, or prunednode.today, which is maintained by our CTO Stepan Snigirev, and you can download a 5 gigabyte pruned node, and you can put this on your laptop and run it, and then put the Spectre on it, and you have a dedicated laptop then for running this. You don't have to buy any new hardware there, and most people have an old laptop lying around, I guess.
So I mean, yeah, I would say that if you want to use Lightning, then it gets a little bit more complicated because you need to have something that's always on. But if we're talking about on-chain Bitcoin, we're talking about cold storage, we're talking about your savings wallets. The cool thing is you can literally just turn it off and turn it on demand. You only really need to have Spectre and Core running when you're actually interacting with your wallets, right?
Yeah. So this is a point where I also would like to ask you, how do you see this? When I look at Get Umbrel and all these Lightning nodes, and I feel for people have the private keys on there for the Lightning stuff, but for me, it feels more, this is still a playground when you see Get Umbrel or Raspberry Blitz. And it's not something where I want to run my Bitcoin Core and cold storage infrastructure on. So is there a difference between the cold storage infrastructure and sort of the hacky, interesting Lightning, new tools infrastructure for you? Or
well, I mean, I think for Lightning, the node implementations make a lot of sense. Like these little node boxes, because once again, you want to run it 24/7, and you want it to be low power consuming. Obviously, they are a hot wallet in terms of Lightning, so there's some security risks there, but that's more on Lightning than the actual node implementations. Hopefully, there's some kind of advancements in terms of having some keys cold and figuring out how to do that. But in practice, I mean, you're constantly having to change state. You need hotkeys. The other use case I would say is for people that are using CoinJoin. I mean, if you're using the Whirlpool implementation, you get free remixing, but only when you're online. So you want that to be on 24/7 as well. So it's for these things that are like 24/7. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know in my personal setup, and I don't like talking about my personal setup too much, but I'll give the freaks a little bit. Is I use a separate Bitcoin Core instance for my cold storage than I do for Lightning. And that's just because in general, if you separate things, you reduce your attack surface, and you're going to be in a better situation from a privacy and security perspective. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary. I guess with the way Spectre is set up is kind of makes sense because, so you alluded to it earlier, Spectre actually isn't, it's more of a UX for Bitcoin Core. Like the keys are actually, like you can see it too. Like if you open Bitcoin Core when you're using Spectre, everything shows up in Bitcoin Core as if you were using Bitcoin Core as a wallet by itself. So presumably, and I haven't done this, but my assumption would be if you were using, so Spectre is cool that it gives you options, right? So we already talked about the easiest option, which I like the most, which is you're running basically a dedicated computer with Spectre and Bitcoin Core on it. But you can also connect to a remote Bitcoin Core. And if you do that, then there's privacy risk because all the UTXO information is on your 24/7 node, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So these are just trade-offs that people should consider and base on their threat model. But I would say that if your primary goal is strong savings, cold storage, it's really unnecessary to be running one of these 24/7 boxes, and it's way more user-friendly and accessible than people realize, just installing Spectre and following the prompts to have Bitcoin Core run alongside it.
It's also like I think it's important if you're a Bitcoiner coming in and you read the Bitcoin Standard and you're listening to all the great podcasts and all the economics and all the macro and whatever, and excited about El Salvador. I think it's quite important that at some point you have to put away the Twitter on your phone and switch off all the noise and just really go and run the node and get your hands a little bit dirty and try to get a little bit more familiar with all the technical stuff that is happening if you're not coming from the developer side anyways and from the technical
100%.
side. So yeah. I see a lot of that people get completely tied up in all this Twitter noise and all this, which is very exciting. I mean, there are like so many blogs and articles and podcasts every day. Like I can't keep up with the space. But I think there's an important thing that you have to pause sometimes and really try to get your hands on the stuff.
Yeah, you got to jump in and get your hands dirty. That's the best way to learn.
Yeah. And then when you go into like running your own node with Spectre, and maybe you want not only use it for single sig, it's very easy and good to use it with a single sig wallet, but we actually build it for a multi-sig cold storage. So, and if you want to have a setup like this, and because you want to protect a larger amount of your savings in Bitcoin, then I recommend like really get familiar with the software, have a single sig setup first, put a small amount, test all the transactions, do the recovery drills, and especially if you're moving to multi-sig. So when I moved to multi-sig, 1.5 years ago, it's really important that you put the keys up in a good way, that you have a plan, that you know what you do, and you ease in. It's not like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to take my multi-sig and I expect it to be done in 2 hours. No. This is like a thing where you have to really ease in over time, in my opinion.
Yeah, take it slow, practice everything, restore. You want to practice the backup restore procedure. You want to pretend like you're in a situation where like devices are broken. You want to get really comfortable with it, because when you're in an actual situation where you're trying to recover the funds, you don't want that to be the first time you're doing it. You're going to scare the shit out of yourself. You're going to panic, and maybe you screw things up. So you want to take it slow, but at the same time, don't be scared about it. It's not as overwhelming as one might think, right?
Exactly.
So Keith, you have anything to add here?
Yeah, so let me just jump in. The node in a box, the umbrals are both blessing and curse, right? They make it so easy. You can one-click install Spectre, but when you want to do something a little more complicated, it makes life complicated. So if you want to run Spectre outside of your Umbral node, but you figure, hey, I'm running a full node on Umbral, so I'll just connect my other Spectre laptop to my Umbral node, which you can do, but Umbral only exposes the node over Tor. So now on your local network, you have one machine navigating Tor just to get to your local network node on Umbral. And somebody mentioned in the comments that Black Coffee said I really liked Spectre Desktop, but it got really laggy on multiple computers. And it depends on your setup, but something like this it's kind of unexpected, because in your mind it's really natural to just think, I'm running a node, I'm running Spectre, connect the two, magic happens, it's great. But it's just kind of absurd to go through the Tor step when you're all on your own local network. And so the point where you want to be more like Moritz and pull your Spectre off of Umbral, because maybe you just don't have the same level of trust in Umbral or in that environment, then you really should just be running a second node, just to make the communication quick, whether it's on the same laptop or a node running on your local network. But just, you can't connect to it over Tor. It's going to make the experience terrible. And there are places in Spectre where we definitely need to look at the time it takes to do these RPC calls when you're talking from Spectre to your node, and try to make the experience better, maybe cache more in memory if we can. But at the end of the day, we directly interface with Core. And if you're connecting over a slow connection, it's just going to be a miserable experience.
Right. And like the complete counterpoint is having Core and Spectre on the same machine is the exact opposite, right? There's no external communication that has to happen, period.
Right. It's going to be as fast as that RPC connection and your computer laptop CPU is going to allow. And then someone, Lance Hoddle, also said, so what you're telling me is, since I run a node anyway, I should delete Ledger Live and use Spectre, or anything. You can use Sparrow, you can use Spectre. I don't know, Lance Hoddle, and I don't know your level of technical experience, but I can speak for myself. Like, it took me a long time to understand that my Bitcoin wasn't stuck in Ledger Live, and that it wasn't stuck even on the Ledger device itself. It was a revelation when I started using Spectre, and I could import the XPubs from my Ledger and see all my balances. I'm like, oh my God, it's here. And like, I was such a noob. I'm like, how did it copy over? But yeah, that's the beauty of Bitcoin. All your value is sitting on, the blockchain that everyone has a copy of. So yeah, get rid of the corporate spyware and just run your own node, connect your keys to it in basically watch only mode, and everything is already there.
I would add that, you shouldn't, I think most people that fuck around with shitcoins would have been better off just being humble and stacking sats. But if you are fucking around with shitcoins, that's probably the main reason to use Ledger Live. But if you're not, and you are Bitcoin only, you should switch, yes, and you should use your own node. And like we said earlier, it is way easier than you would expect.
Yeah, so talking about shitcoins on Ledger or on Trezor, it's like I have a theory. It's like maybe like a outlook or conspiracy theory. So I would say that these the regulators, if they start moving forward against all these against Bitcoin and crypto and trying to tie things down, as we see in Canada happening, also in the European Union, is I think they will begin to approach Ledger and Trezor and tell them, okay, guys, you don't have the private keys, but you are actually operating a wallet and node infrastructure, and you're preparing transactions and you're broadcasting transactions. What you're actually doing, you're a payment provider, and you're giving out these hardware tokens to your users, and you don't KYC on AML them. So what I would say is, like, they will receive a lot of pressure, Ledger and Trezor and others, to actually KYC AML the whole infrastructure. So if you're signing up there or you're using this, they will ask for KYC AML, and they will, I think, directly report it.
I tend to think that that's kind of where we're heading, especially when you see, the clip that I played in the beginning from the Canadian government. But one of the good things here to keep in mind is, because we have Spectre, because we have Sparrow, because we have Electrum and Blue Wallet, or maybe less so Blue Wallet, because Blue Wallet uses their own Electrum server, but by default, you have the option to move at that point. You always have the option to move from Ledger Live or Trezor Web Suite. We have Yoshi Gama in the comments asking, how do we import UTXOs from Ledger? Very, very simple. You basically install Spectre Wallet, you follow the prompts to install Bitcoin Core, and then you click like Add Wallet, and you follow the prompts on Ledger, and you plug in your Ledger, you put in your PIN, and like gives you this very clean UX that tells you how to connect to it. Same with Trezor, same with Seed Signer, same with Cold Card. Same with all of the hardware wallets. You just, once you install Spectre, you just basically follow the prompts inside Spectre to integrate whatever wallet setup you have, whether that's multi-sig or single sig.
Exactly. So, one more point here is, like, I think this will be very good for Bitcoin, because if you use Ledger and Trezor and you have like your, I don't know, 20 token or cryptocurrency portfolio there, or your shitcoin portfolio, is like, not a lot of people will actually start running, I don't know, 10 different nodes for 10 different cryptocurrency networks. I think if this pressure comes on, a lot of people will just run to Bitcoin and convert all their shitcoins into Bitcoin, and because it doesn't, like, you cannot, as a home user, when you don't want to use Ledger or Trezor, it doesn't make any sense to run all these nodes. Like, most people won't do it. So what a lot of people will do is, like, I think, go towards Bitcoin. So this kind of pressure, this attack on the crypto space, to say so in general, is actually good for Bitcoin and will weed out like all these shitcoin projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at these types of situations, they could be bad for Bitcoiners, like individual Bitcoiners. Mm-hmm. But in general, if you look at the actual ecosystem, usually, Bitcoin has been referred to as an anti-fragile protocol, and basically the idea is that as it gets attacked, as these weak points get hit, the whole system becomes more robust in response to it. And because it is free and open source software that anyone can run, you don't have centralized actors there that you can push on. It's almost like a virus. The code is out there. Good luck stopping its distribution and improvement.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, we were talking about shitcoins, so we can just jump right into it. Spectre does offer support for one of the shitcoins, and that's Liquid Bitcoin. What were your thoughts with adding Liquid? How do you view that integration? I mean, I think there aren't many Liquid wallets, so it's a very key aspect of what Spectre's offering.
So around December 2021 and early 2022, we were looking at what to do next at Spectre, and we're looking at doing Lightning or doing some collaborative custody solution. But then started a conversation with the Blockstream team and Samson, and wrapped our head around Liquid. So like the nice thing about Liquid is that it doesn't create it does create a new token, but it's liquid Bitcoin, so it locks in real Bitcoin and uses Bitcoin, locked in Bitcoin as their native token, and does move around these liquid Bitcoin with confidential transactions, which basically in the confidential transaction you cannot see if liquid Bitcoin was moved, or if a stable coin was moved, or some kind of other token was moved, or equity token or debt token, a Blockstream mining node. So you cannot see what was moved and how much was moved, but you just see the transaction there, that there's a transaction happening. So we thought that the Liquid model fits better the Spectre model, because it's also it doesn't have to be always on, it doesn't have to be always connected like in Lightning, so it fits the Spectre approach better. And we see something that is an interesting tool for Bitcoiners and for the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. And if something is underdeveloped, then yeah, we like to touch it and work on it, because we also see a lot of back at the time already. We saw a lot of projects in Lightning, and we're seeing a lot of things happening in Lightning. So we thought like, okay, Liquid may be an interesting niche for us. And it was a bit, it was tough to integrate. It wasn't easy. We were working hard with this, got great support by the Blockstream team. And then we launched around October, and Liquid is not very popular with Bitcoiners. We see this. And but I think there's certain aspects around the confidential transactions, around the stable coins. Like if you want to touch on stable coins, there is a clear use case for it. People use it, people want it. And it's all happening on all this economic activity around these stable coins is happening mostly on Ethereum and Tron. So as a Bitcoiner, I don't want to see this happening on these shitcoin networks. Basically, I want to see this happening on a side on a Bitcoin native sidechain, which is clearly federated by a group of companies and organizations. But at least it's Bitcoin native, and it's looking to be as close to the Bitcoin infrastructure as possible, and so integrated as possible. So this was our thinking there.
I was mostly teasing you with the shitcoin comment. Thank you for.
I was teasing. I don't know, but I think in 2019 back we had a meeting there during the conference in San Francisco with Adam Beck, and I was teasing him that he's building a clown coin factory.
Exactly. Well, I mean, especially since it's so you can transfer this liquid Bitcoin, which is pegged to Bitcoin 1-to-1. The trust model is similar to what you would expect, like a multi-sig kind of semi-custodial model, where you have all these federation members who basically need to collude to steal the money, has the ability to send tokens on top. I had a really great conversation with Adam Back about Liquid and other things. That's Citadel Dispatch 20. If you freaks haven't listened to it and you're more curious about Liquid, go check that out. That's citadeldispatch.com/CD20. And then recently, I actually had two Venezuelan Bitcoiners on, Citadel Dispatch 52, and they were talking about stable coins, which can be transferred on Liquid, and how useful they are to the Latin American population. So I think a lot of, from my perspective, Bitcoin is my stable coin. I think on a long time scale, it's the most, stable asset we will ever have. I think it'll trend up with adoption, but as adoption starts to hit a critical mass, it'll always increase slowly in purchasing power, but it'll become very stable. But in the short term, when you're looking at a lot of these developing world countries, they really want to peg themselves to the US dollar. They want access to the US dollars, and stablecoins provide a route for them in that regard. So I guess Liquid could be, Spectre could be a way that they could hold, right? They can hold these stable coins.
Yes. So
Now,
first,
I'm curious:
yes.
can you do multi-sig liquid on Spectre?
Yes, with the Spectre hardware wallet, you can do it. I think we are working on.
Oh, because the
I'm not
hardware
sure.
wallets themselves need to support it as well.
Yes, so there's for liquid hardware we have the Jade, but I'm not sure if it can already do multi-sig. I think we are working on that. Or the green team is working on that. But with Spectre, with the Spectre DIY or the Spectre Shield, we have a new device coming up. You can use liquid multi-signature cold storage there. And I wanted to, this is something also important if you start issuing equity tokens or Bitcoin bonds, and you want to be able to hold these tokens in multi-sig, or also as a company, if you want to hold like a part of your treasury in, or like of your, you have your Bitcoin stack in cold storage, but you want to hold some stable coin for working capital stability. So this is something also you want to probably hold in multi-sig, in a liquid multi-sig cold storage. And this is something I really noticed in El Salvador when I was down there in June, that the price went down from 60 to 30,000, and all these small hotels there and restaurants and everybody, they didn't want to accept Bitcoin anymore. And I was like, what's going on? And they basically had their working capital balance crash. Like on the way up, everybody wanted to have Bitcoin, and on the way down, it got really, really painful for these small businesses, because you cannot run your little hotel without working capital stability, which means that if you get paid in Bitcoin, then Bitcoin price crashes and you have to buy new supplies for your restaurant or pay your employees. So this, we are not there yet. We need some kind of short-term stability, and short-term stability, well, is not, especially is what you get with Bitcoin. You get it to the upside over the long term, but running a business on Bitcoin, if you don't have a strong capital, how you say, basis, reserve,
Yeah.
it's really difficult. So yeah, so these two
Yeah,
cents on the table coins there.
I think most Bitcoiners can relate. At least, any Bitcoiner that's all in and makes money, like earns Bitcoin directly, can relate to just your net worth dropping by 50% in a couple of weeks is never a good feeling. So before we continue, you helped run the Adopting Bitcoin conference in El Salvador, right?
Yes. So in June, when I was there, I met with Nicolas, which is the CTO of Bitcoin Beach, and the Galloy team. And I was there, and I was like a bit surprised that in July there wasn't more Bitcoin activity. We had Brekkie there, we had Mark Moss, but basically it was just a bunch of 20 Bitcoiners there. And so we started talking about what can be done. And one thing was that Fode, Aaron, Nicola, and me, we set up the Bitcoin meetup in San Salvador and really kickstarted this. But we also did this to meet the local Bitcoiners, which was helpful for Aaron, but also to prepare the ground for a Bitcoin conference, the Adopting Bitcoin conference. And what actually happened is that the first week we were out in El Zonte, and the second week, Nicola and me, we went to San Salvador, and through my LinkedIn contacts, I'm a little bit of a LinkedIn monster there. I contacted a bunch of bankers and managers there in San Salvador. We had meetings with a bunch of banks there, and we came in there, and basically nobody knew about what they want to do. And they were talking, one bank was talking to Ripple actually. And so I was then putting a bit more pressure on Nicola and said, hey, we need a conference. And then great kudos, huge respect to the whole Bitcoin Beach and Galloy team there, that they actually decided to pull this off. And we had a really, really fantastic conference in November with amazing energy. 700 Bitcoiners on the ground in the Sheraton Hotel there. And we had a fantastic time. We had a beach day. We had 2-day conferences with much of a Lightning focus. I would like to add a little bit more Bitcoin focus. It's not yet announced, but I think it will be coming back in November to El
Awesome.
Salvador, and it's gonna be off the chart. It was an amazing
Yeah, I mean,
energy.
the lineup and the agenda was great. I mean, as someone who unfortunately couldn't make it, I was feeling some massive FOMO. To other people who weren't able to make it, if you go to Adopting Bitcoin, if you go to bitcointv.com, Adopting Bitcoin has a channel there with all the talks. Highly recommend. Some really great content and discussions came out of that event. So thank you for running that. What was your that was your first time in El Salvador, right?
No, my first time was after the announcement, like a month
Oh,
later.
right.
And then I
Right.
started talking them into. And then my second time, I came for the conference like a week before, a week afterwards. We will probably also be the month in November this time.
So what was your opinion of on the ground in El Salvador? I mean, the first country to, adopt Bitcoin nationwide. How did it feel? Did it feel like a success so far? What were the pain points? How did the average people seem to take it?
I mean, it feels really electric because especially in July when we came there, like, okay, it's just really a little beach town and we have basically 20 shops or whatever, 30 shops accepting Bitcoin there. It wasn't like the big thing that we see on Bitcoin Twitter. But and we were like also like there was another reason for the conference with the banks stuff. We were really worried that the 7th of September, that Bitcoin starts in El Salvador and basically nothing works. Everything is a shit show. And it didn't come like this. So the 7th of September was really successful. You can say about Chivo what you want, but it kind of works. And it for a government put together
So
wallet,
low bar kind of works is a success.
It's pretty good, And then in November, we came back in November, and like the difference was massive. We landed at the airport, went to the little restaurant store there, and could right away pay our lunch with Bitcoin. It wasn't Lightning, it was on chain, whatever, but it was already that. And then you go into the town, and you can go to the little pupusa arepa shop there. And pay there, but you also can go to McDonald's, to Starbucks, and stuff just works, And so this is like, it's really exciting to see this and to be this is the first place. This is ground zero, and yes. So I think also like to expand a little bit on that here is like. A lot of people are thinking, Bukele and stuff. I think Bukele needs the Bitcoiners now way more than the Bitcoiners need Bukele, or Bitcoin needs Bukele. He really is betting big time on the whole Bitcoin story, and I think he's also very dependent on his public perception and stuff. So he needs to be well received by the Bitcoiners on Bitcoin Twitter. So I think the game theory is quite interesting there.
I mean, definitely for him to the extreme, but I mean, I would say that's probably pretty consistent with the way you should look at like every government, every individual, every corporation. They all need Bitcoin more than Bitcoin needs them. Bitcoin's bigger than any of those individuals. Just a complete tangent, because this is awesome. The guy Yochi who asked the question earlier about Ledger and using it with Spectre is completed his onboarding process while we were having this conversation. So
yay,
I think that just goes to show how easy you guys have gotten that UX down. El Salvador is a very interesting case study. It definitely it's what you would expect. That a challenger country, a small country, would adopt Bitcoin first. It happened sooner than I expected. I'm curious to see if other countries start to follow suit in like kind of a dominoes type of way. Obviously, the Chiva wallet has a lot of privacy and custodial concerns in terms of the government's control over it. But the key aspect there is that Chivo does interact with the greater Bitcoin monetary network and the Lightning Network, and as a result, you can use tools like Spectre in your own node or Blue Wallet or Moon to use, rather than relying on the government wallet. Like, I don't think people should be relying on that government wallet. It does concern me a bit, and I think people should be. It's important that as Bitcoiners, especially ones with public platforms, that we talk about the trade-offs that are inherent there, because they are real trade-offs and they are real risks to users of that wallet. But that is awesome. I really need to make my pilgrimage to El Salvador. I am a little bit ashamed of myself that I haven't done it yet, but I will soon. Hopefully, I can make the next Adopting Bitcoin conference. That would be fucking fire.
I will make sure you have enough FOMO that you can't let this go.
Well, pretty good at. I have a feeling you're going to be successful at that. I mean, I got so much FOMO in the last one. Before we switch into the El Salvador question, people were giving you shit in the comments about Liquid integration, saying you shouldn't have Liquid integrated. I think it's important for people to realize that it is an optional feature. You can use Spectre without ever using Liquid, as I do. And then there's also this aspect. We're going to be talking about another feature that has been controversial. But before we get there, Spectre is MIT licensed, which is one of the least restrictive open source licenses available. Not only can you inspect and verify the code, but you can modify, distribute, and sell it without any additional permission from the Spectre team. So if there is a lot of demand for a Spectre wallet without Liquid in it, another team, a group of individuals, a single individual can fork out Liquid. So you have that option available to you as a user. That is one of the beauties of free and open source software. Moritz, how do you view, because Spectre is an interesting project, right? And I just had the seed signer. I had Seed Signer on yesterday. I know Keith's involved with the Seed Signer project as well. That is also an MIT licensed product. There's a lot of interesting different models that are going on in terms of open source projects that are also being run for profit. And he's not actually running Seed Signer for profit right now, but he is considering different potential paths. How do you view your choice of the MIT license of having Spectre as proper free open source software with this also attempt at path to monetization? Like, how do you look at that?
So just to explain a little bit how we think about this. So the Spectre core version, which I mentioned before, is like your node, your verification, your wallet infrastructure, your privacy, your keys, your Bitcoin. Like, this is the core feature of Spectre, and this is should be always free and should always put the user by default into the right direction, that he runs his own node. I mean, we will maybe add later on some Electrum feature, but I would like to really keep it by default node. And this is something where I square a little bit with Sparrow, where the default mode is more towards running it with a Electrum, pre-selected Electrum servers, I think MZ, Blockstream, Mempool, and others. But I think like the default settings really define the long-term user behavior. And then you have set up your Spectre or your desktop wallet. And I think then the question comes in, like, how do you, like, as a team, maintain it, and how do you keep supporting it and keep this wallet info experience really great? So there are different ways to go forward. Like, one would be a CoinJoin integration, where Sparrow has gone or Wasabi has gone, that you earn money on the CoinJoin side, and the money you earn is helping to improve the wallet experience. Or you add other tools, you could integrate a TDEX or other features, or services like Swan Bitcoin. And earn money through the cooperation with these companies, and from these fees can pay a team to support the desktop wallet in such a sense. So to answer your question, yeah, I don't really see a point in forking out Spectre here, because like if you download Spectre and you run it by default, you don't activate any CoinJoin tools or services that you might want to use to buy or sell Bitcoin, or Bitcoin-backed loans features or something like this. Then you have a clean, free default mode here. If that makes
Your point
makes
is
sense to you.
it's optional, so there's no need to
Yes.
fork it.
Yes, and like we have a good group of legit Bitcoiners working on this, and they will maintain this as we build out this model.
Right. So the defensive position is you have a solid reputation. You have solid eyes looking at the code and improving the code. So the overwhelming majority of people will use your distribution, even if technically anyone can fork it and do what they want with it, right?
Yes, and if somebody comes along and says like, "Oh, we want to fork Spectre," and when we are happy to go into a discussion then to see like, okay, how can we provide a Spectre minimal version or something like this,
Right.
And support this team in offering which is just like the minimal OG version, to say so. So, but at the moment, to be frank, we don't have the resources. We're working on getting in some resources to build out the team and keep improving the Spectre overall. And yeah, so
do you guys have a public donation page?
We have a public donation page. It's a little bit we are a little bit hidden on our GitHub, I guess. But if you go on our GitHub, help wanted, and there's the donation link. And yes, so we bootstrapped the thing for the last 3 years with Stepan's brain power on low salaries and my low salaries, and lots of Bitcoin and Satoshis that I put into Spectre to have this wallet out there.
Yeah, like
yeah, go on.
If you look at what I think, biased opinion, the most important wallets in the space, aside from Core, obviously, you've got Spectre, Sparrow. I would consider Blue Wallet on that list. I would consider Samurai on that list. But just looking at Spectre and Sparrow, like those are like I think your two best choices for your multi-sig, your cold storage, that the most hardcore Bitcoiners, that should be like, their default options is one of those two. And the Spectre technical team, it's Stepan is the giant brain doing the hardest things that are closest to Bitcoin, that are like way more complicated than I can understand. And then you basically have like one other, mostly full-time developer. I came into Spectre just as a open source contributor. I was like, hey, I'd like it to be able to do, I'd like it to be able to use Tor. Do you mind if I build Tor support? And they're like, oh my God, please do. Like, hey, do you mind if I make it so I can plug in my USB hardware wallet? And they're like, holy shit, yes, please do that. But the team is tiny. And then, Sparrow, it's just Craig, right? I shouldn't have phrased it. It's just Craig raw, comma, correct?
He's a monster.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is so prolific, right? He's so impressive. But and I think he just got a grant recently from HRF.
Correct.
But like, these are two really important wallets being primarily worked on and maintained by like people you can count on one hand. Like it's insane. Right. And I don't know what the funding, the revenue model solution is. I mean, I'm currently community funded to do my full-time seed signer work, but it's also meant to be short term. Like I had this window of opportunity.
It's hard to make donations work.
Yeah, yeah. Like I can't plan the next, year or 2 or 3 of my life around being community funded, but I was able to carve out, hey, I can do the next 3 months. And if the money runs out after that, okay, then I go find a normie job. Um, but just these super important projects are run by so few people with shoestring or non-existent budgets. It's mind-boggling. Like it I when I think about it, it makes me feel like the space is a little more vulnerable than we realize.
Oh yeah, we're way more vulnerable than people realize, especially on Bitcoin Twitter. Well, first off, Maurice, you failed the question earlier. If people want to donate to Spectre, you go to donate.spectre.solutions to
You're
support
right.
them. Consider supporting them if you like if you like their software. Um, the second thing is, Keith, like I think what's really cool about Bitcoin, and I find it's a very interesting subtopic of Bitcoin, is this idea of monetizing free and open source projects, because Bitcoin all of a sudden brings in these new possibilities in terms of actually monetizing without integrating third party companies or centralized third parties, like taking donations via Stripe. So like as much as the donation model is probably not sustainable, it's definitely way more practical in a post Bitcoin world, because you're just spinning up a BTC Pay server or something. People can pay you with any Bitcoin wallet, without KYC, without a centralized third party. But then on top of that, some of these models that are being tested out, and you mentioned Sparrow, Craig has a public donation page, which everyone should go support him as well if you like Sparrow. I have supported him. But he's also now making money from his CoinJoin integration, and that is a actual very sustainable business model, where when you do CoinJoins, when you do CoinJoin transactions, when you do these collaborative Bitcoin transactions in Sparrow Wallet, there's a fee that is paid, and he gets a portion of it, and the Samurai Wallet devs get a portion of it, purely in Bitcoin, right? So he has this Bitcoin treasury that is basically accumulating there, and presumably, if he doesn't have other open source contributors come in at the goodness of their heart to start contributing, he can start paying people. And that's another thing, by the way. Like if you are a programmer, consider, Spectre is free and open source software. Consider going to their GitHub, consider contributing, consider review. I'm sure Maritz and the rest of the team over there would appreciate it. So do consider
Absolutely do. Absolutely do. So we are looking at the different CoinJoin implementations. We are in discussions there for a join market web UI, where something is happening with Gigi and Dennis Ryman. But we
that.
also
We have a bounty for that. The HRF, I helped set up a bounty with HRF. If whoever comes up with the web UI for join market gets, I think we're at like a half a Bitcoin, but don't quote me on that.
Join market on Whirlpool would be really cool. A join market on Spectre would be really cool, because I think then the users can actually generate Bitcoin yields by providing market making liquidity to the join market. So I think that was really cool. But we are sort of in this whole CoinJoin war, especially between Whirlpool and Wasabi. We try to be neutral, and we are looking at the different implementations there. It's a bit difficult, and we also, like, during the hardware wallet war, so overall in the hardware wallets, like, we do the Spectre DIY, but for us it was always, we want to keep out of these hardware wallet wars, and we want to be very constructive and like contributing to the space, and not like get into Twitter or flame wars there. So, and that's why we also added like all hardware wallets which have reasonable traction in the space, and are like not like a full shitcoin thing only or something. So we try to be the neutral there. I would love to see a Wasabi and a Whirlpool integration there. I think Wasabi 2.0 is coming up with something there. So we would be interested.
So what your plan of attack is to integrate all three, join market, Whirlpool, and Wasabi?
then let the market decide, and then you can whirlpool first and wasabi later and join market finally until you have coin joined yourself out of all your Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, look, I like the idea of Spectre being, the wallet of options. Options are good. Bitcoiners should be happy they have more options, and they should choose the ones that fit their particular situation best. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
CoinJoin
well,
specifically is a very interesting revenue model for, especially because you kill two birds with one stone. You're able to bring in revenue for you, but you're improving the privacy of your users.
Yes, and yeah, that's a good point to hit on now, because like we integrated first with Swan Bitcoin now, so you can stack directly from Swan Bitcoin into your Spectre wallet, and we got some pushback on
Yeah,
Twitter
let's
to
talk
say
about
so,
that.
and people were saying, "Hey, you're an open source wallet here. How do you square this with integrating a KYC company like Swan Bitcoin?" And I think on a larger picture here, it's like we started working with Swan 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 4 months ago, and it really helped us a lot to build like this extension and tool, this extension system, which we now will use to add coin joins in, join market in, and it was really great working with Pablo and with Jan from Swan there, and to see how they do things, and through this building experience, we came to our extension model there. And on a bigger picture, I would say is that on the one side, as Bitcoiners, we want to hyper Bitcoinize as fast and defund all this clown world around us. So we want to have fast adoption. And on the other side, we want to see no KYC. And if you talk no KYC, I mean, of course, you can go with your couple of thousand euros to your local meetup. And if you're in Germany and the country is relatively safe, you can go to your local meetup and your buddies there, and maybe somebody wants to sell, and you can do that, or you can go to BISC, and you can go to Hodl Hodl or something like this. But I think we will have very slow adoption if everybody would do no KYC.
So let's talk about this, because this is one of the main topics I wanted to talk about, and I'm torn on it personally. I mean, I am probably one of the more outspoken people in the space about the dangers of KYC. This idea that regulated Bitcoin companies are keeping lists of Bitcoiners and our transaction history. They're keeping those lists forever. They're sharing those lists. They're storing them insecurely. Maybe they get stolen, used by criminals, used by governments for political persecution, like we're seeing in Canada right now. But at the same time, I am a man of nuance, and I understand a lot of people are going to be coming in through regulated on ramps. So, I mean, I think there's a multi-pronged approach there. I think first and foremost, we should be obvious about the trade-offs and risks there, because most newcomers coming into the space do not even understand that there's trade-offs or risks. So they can't make an informed decision to begin with. And then secondly, just like little things, like we see newcomers come in, they KYC with like 10 different services. They send their ID to 10 different companies in 8 different countries, just immediately, and sign up for every service under the sun. Just like limiting your KYC exposure to maybe one on-ramp, and then never KYCing with another service besides that, using forward privacy tools. So I'm a little bit torn on this debate, because actually I was one of the people, one of the most outspoken people pushing Swan in this direction, which is this idea that a on-ramp that is regulated has a responsibility to their users to make a UX flow that reduces their risk to KYC as much as possible. And what do I mean by that? I mean, Swan has auto buys, right? So it's auto stacking instead of trading. So you're averaging in over time. The volatility isn't hitting you. Then they have auto withdrawals, but the problem with the auto withdrawals, the nice thing about auto withdrawals is you have reduced custodial risk. The problem was the easiest way for them to integrate it was a fixed reused address. So anyone on chain could see that the same address was receiving, maybe $50 worth of Bitcoin a week or $100 worth of Bitcoin a week. And they could basically assume that someone there was doing an auto DCA, probably with Swan, for $100 a week, and was leaking all this information. So then where do you go from there? Well, you can integrate paynims, which would be awesome, which is what I wanted them to do, or you can integrate XPubs. So they came up with this XPub tool that was an open source, locally done XPub tool where you put your XPub in, and instead of the XPub going to their servers, it sends like the next 10 addresses or something. But that was clunky. Most people weren't using it, right? So enter the Spectre integration, which is this idea that you open Spectre, you create I guess you can either create a new wallet or you can link it with an existing wallet. And it sends 10 fresh addresses that haven't been used to Swan. And then and then it reserves them within Spectre's UI, so you don't reuse them because you don't want to use an address that is already linked to a KYC exchange. And on top of that, it doesn't have to be a hot wallet. It could be it can be a hardware wallet. It could be a multi-sig. It could be whatever wallet you're using in Spectre. So it is a evolution in terms of the UX and flow of using a KYC service. So it's obviously a benefit there, but you do have this inherent KYC risk that comes with it. So I mean, first of all, I was going to get Mauriz's opinion, but he conveniently disconnected. I think his internet probably cut. Hopefully he'll join us soon. So while we're waiting for Mauriz just came back and joined us. Mauriz, I was just explaining basically the flow and the different trade-offs. Keith, Keith, I know you helped work on this integration. What is your opinion here? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, I totally respect the no KYC or limit your KYC maximalism. I would describe myself as a pragmatist maximalist. And so for existing Swan users, the Spectre integration is 100% a better experience and better for their privacy. Because as you said, so the normal Swan XPub route is you submit your XPub to them. Now they say it stays in your browser, and I guess your browser calculates 100 addresses or something.
It's generated locally. You can inspect Element if you want to look at the code. It's open source tool or whatever.
Yeah, but I think Jan said that it was a huge number, maybe I don't know, 500 or something. Because I asked him what happens when you run out of addresses and you need to reload. And he's like, that hasn't happened yet because they send so many over the wire. So in this case, and look, I want to make super clear, Jan gets all of this too, right? It's not like he's greedily trying to scoop up your private info. He's a good actor. He's doing everything he can from his side, working for a KYC on-ramp to limit those touch points. And I think, he's doing a very good, admirable job, even if you find that philosophical side of the fence disagreeable. But anyway, with the Spectre integration, like you said, we're only sending 10 addresses at most. And then each time you sign into Spectre, it checks essentially your address balance, how many are still outstanding, and it tops you up if you've received 3 auto withdrawals, and since the last time you opened Spectre, it sends 3 more to Swan. So at any one point in time, Swan only has 10 of your future addresses, and the previous XPub method only worked for single sig. So it's a huge upgrade to be able to use your own multi-sig cold storage. I mean, this could be your ice cold vault that you have to travel to 5 different countries to spend from, and you can be stacking to that from Swan without any hardware wallet or messing with your
Automatically
storage.
using your own node.
Yeah. So for existing Swan users, it's a total slam dunk. And even people
For just
that are
KYC users in general, it's probably the best KYC. If you're going to KYC, it's probably the best KYC flow that exists right now, right?
Yeah. And something that even I'm just kind of wrapping my brain around, I haven't used the Whirlpool integration with Sparrow, but I kind of feel like you should be able to have the exact same parallel wallet in Spectre and in Sparrow. And so when your Swan deposits come in, you could see them come in on the Spectre side, but then open the identical wallet in Sparrow and say, hey, you know what? I want to coin join those. And you've got it right there.
You brought me to my next thing, which is, Maurice is talking about integrating CoinJoin. If you want to talk about the real ideal KYC flow, and we're going to talk about is this idea that you have a hot wallet, you create a new Swan wallet in Spectre that is only for Swan. You get auto withdrawals to that wallet in fresh addresses, and then it automatically coin joins. And then from after it does a couple coin join rounds, the user sets how many rounds they want. Then it goes to your multi-sig cold storage that's across 5 different continents. That would be like the best flow in terms of minimizing KYC risk while still using a regulated entity.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's how it should be. And if there were 1,000 hours in a day, that would be ready to go right now.
Make it happen, Keith.
Well, in terms of, so here's a pitch. In terms of funding, there's Spectre is a tiny team. And I'm struggling to understand the Whirlpool ecosystem. I've used it. I get how the tools work, but I've been struggling to figure out what we would have to do to actually integrate with Whirlpool. And so for sure, at some point, I'm going to just have to have conversations with the Samurai devs and to understand this better.
And with Craig, because he just did it.
Right. But I think Craig had a little bit of an easier time because Sparrow is Java.
Correct.
And then the Whirlpool client that you can run on your own node is also Java. And so essentially my understanding is that Sparrow is replacing the role of that local Java Whirlpool client that you would run, that you can one-click install from Umbrel. And not that it was just a copy and paste job, but Java to Java, he knows how to read that code. He can kind of absorb it and alter it, whatever.
Made it easier.
Yeah, or use even some existing libraries, maybe if any of them are open sourced. But basically, we need a Python implementation of a client that can talk to the Whirlpool servers. And as far as I know, that doesn't exist. It should exist. If we have to build it, we will. I want to build it, but right now I'm full-time seed signer, and then when I feel like I've accomplished enough during my day, I set that aside and okay, cool. What do I want to do in Spectre now? Or it's Saturday or Sunday, right? This is what I do for fun in my free time on top of my quote full-time job with Seed Signer. But if somebody out there has the Python skills to build a Python Whirlpool client, hell yeah, bring it on. We'll integrate that sucker as fast as we can.
Yep. So this is actually the plan going forward, is that the flow you just described from stacking into your coin join cold storage this is actually the flow we want to go towards, because this is also, it's not perfectly in terms of no KYC, because it's not that you buy it peer-to-peer on a meetup or a conference or or like that.
There's still
So
a record of you purchasing Bitcoin and how
yes.
much Bitcoin and what your withdrawal address was.
Yes, and like if you do this, and as a Bitcoiner, you should assume that this kind of data leaks, and we have seen it from the Ledger hack when they had all their
Right.
customer list hacked. Like this,
Home
this stuff is
addresses, name, phone number, email.
yes. So I think going forward, when the state really understands that the money is not under his control anymore, and as we see in Canada, I would expect like the this FinTrack thing there in Canada come to Bull Bitcoin and tell Francis like, okay, we want to have a list of all your customers, all the email addresses, and we want to know to which addresses these Bitcoin come to. So this is what I would expect, not only in Canada but worldwide. Especially when the gains are too high, and like the climate change FUD is coming, and then you have to pay a climate change solidarity tax on your Bitcoin stack and about the time you hodled it. And then they look at these addresses and they will go to chain analysis and just check, these has hopped 1, 2, or 3 times. We assume that you have X amount of Bitcoin. Please send 10% of these to this tax authority Bitcoin address. Thank you very much. This is what I expect to come. And then you can choose if you want to keep sitting in Germany, where the German Supreme Court already has basically waived climate change lockdowns and insanity, and the European Union is setting up a European asset registry. And if you want to do that, okay, you can sit in Germany and then you pay 20% on your corona tax or climate change tax. Or you say, okay, I'm going to pack up and I'm going to El Salvador or Mexico, or move to Paraguay and Panama or whatever. So this is the choice that's coming up for a lot of people over the next 5 years. Or you buy no KYC at your local Bitcoin meetup.
Yeah, or you mine. I mean, there's a lot of no KYC. There's a lot of discussions on Dispatch. Freaks who haven't listened to them in the past can go back. I mean, I'm not going to list episode numbers because there's been, this is Dispatch 56, and maybe we've talked about the trade-offs of KYC in like 40 of them, 45 of them. So go listen to the archives. I mean, you can mine, you can earn Bitcoin, you can spend Bitcoin rather than buying or selling Bitcoin. But let's keep talking about this this Swan integration, because you guys have gotten a lot of pushback on it. First of all, it is optional, right? I assume it's a monetization method as well, right? Like you get a kickback with the Swan integration.
Yes, we have like Swan Bitcoin has a referral system, and if our user, like if a Spectre user comes and signs up for the service through the Spectre referral link, he can support the Spectre there, as we are getting a cut out of the fees there. And this is how we moving forward, we plan to support better wallet development and a bigger developer team to keep the free default system really well set up. So this is also a monetization. Like you need to make money. You have to pay your bills and you have to pay your developers, and people have to pay rent somehow.
Right. So I mean, right before you guys integrated Swan. By the way, Keith, in response to my to the dispatch we did, where we were discussing your recent integration. I think it was CD53 with Carmen and Tony. You mentioned that you were adding some kind of like warning tooltip that it's a KYC service and it comes with privacy risks. Did that ever get added? Did that ever get merged?
It's been merged. I don't think there's been a new release. So it would be something like a 1.8.2. I think 1.8.1 is the current release. So whatever the next either minor or major release is, that'll be included.
Awesome. I love to see when open Bitcoin discussion results in improved product, improved projects. It's really great to see. I mean, like I said, I think the number one thing when it comes to the risks of KYC is that these trade-offs are disclosed, that users are aware, that they can make their own decision. I mean, Bitcoin and the open source movement in general, to me, is a freedom movement. It's a movement of personal responsibility. It's a movement where ultimately you're going to have many options available to you, and users should make their own informed decision on how they want to proceed. But right before you guys integrated Swan, there was the AOPP debate on Bitcoin Twitter. AOPP is the Address Ownership Proof Protocol. It was designed based on Swiss compliance rules, based on the travel rule, which FATFA pushed the travel rule. FATFA is an unelected bureaucratic organization globally that doesn't actually pass laws, but they have a bunch of member countries, and they make these very strong worded suggestions like they did with the travel rule, and then they leave it up to individual countries to implement them. Switzerland went above and beyond and said that any person using a regulated Swiss Bitcoin exchange needs to sign their withdrawal addresses. Signing a withdrawal address is a native Bitcoin function. It's a very cool function. It's a way of proving you have ownership of an address, or you have control over an address in a verifiable way that is very easy for anyone to verify around the world without exposing your private keys. This is what many of us have been saying that Craig Wright should do to prove, at least to give some benefit of the doubt that he's Satoshi. Sign some early keys that people presume belong to Satoshi. He refuses to do it because he's a fraud. But AOPP was this idea that let's make this signing process easier, integrate it into wallets. So instead of going through a little bit more cumbersome of a process to sign an address, because a lot of wallets already offer that functionality, including Bitcoin Core, make it easier and make it standardized. There was a lot of pushback against it, most notably because a lot of Bitcoiners, I think myself included, don't think that we should go above and beyond to comply with burdensome regulation. It just kind of solidifies that regulation rather than putting pressure on the individual companies to basically then go put pressure on their governments to say, you're completely destroying our business model. If you make them comfortable, then they will just proceed, and the regulation will get even more burdensome over time. What's your viewpoint on AOPP? I know Spectre does not have it integrated. Do you have plans to integrate it? How do you feel about it?
So we were not part of this whole drama there because we didn't implement AOPP, but we were approached by Lucas Betchert, who's from 21 Analytics, and he's the head of he's associated very closely to the Swiss Bitcoin Association.
Him and Shift Crypto were like leading the AOPP charge, basically.
Yes. And they were both Swiss companies, and they approached us to add this. But I looked at it, and then, yes, it's like they're doing okay with the signing at that point, and I didn't like the whole smell about it. And then also the user didn't demand it, or we didn't see a lot of push out of Switzerland that all our users want to use it. And I didn't like the dynamic about it, that this travel rule is pushed on the exchanges, and then the user has to sign this. Like, the user should just give his Bitcoin address there and click on withdraw, and that's the story, basically. And there shouldn't be any signing circus and making things more annoying from the UX side. And so we had a phone call or whatever, but we didn't move forward on that, to put it politely, because we didn't like it. And if you really start thinking about this dynamic that the FATF is basically picking up this message signing thing here, and wraps this into his travel rule. If you go down this road, then it becomes really slippery, because what happens if the regulators then approach Sparrow or Spectre and puts a lot of pressure on us that we have to run these travel rule AOPP things by default. And default settings define long-term user behavior. And all of a sudden, if I send Bitcoin to Keith has to AOPP basically
Right.
his address to me. And then as a next level, if you are when we go back to the Trezor and Ledger discussion, which I was bringing up before, and everybody is KYC'd AML, then these infrastructures of Trezor and Ledger, they can feed this back into a, let's say, European Asset Registry or FinTrack system and we basically blow it all away. And like, will it become illegal to do non-AOPP compliant transactions? So talking to
Slippery
like
slope.
regulators in Liechtenstein, like if you talk to these KYC, AML sort of specialists and who talk to the regulators, these people are like really like pretty crazy in my opinion, because they really think that they can press this kind of travel rule stuff into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And we have to take a stand there and say like, okay, and right from the beginning, I think is the way. Like, don't give them a little bit AOPP and then it goes from Switzerland to Austria and next it's in Canada, and no. We have to be non-compliant here from the get-go.
So then, so to go from there, our conversation in CD53 was, and this is where, I mean, you dropped out a little bit, but this is why, even though I originally pushed for, Swan making a easy flow for people to have auto withdraw to their own addresses, amid the AOPP stuff, how do you see the difference between your Swan integration versus AOPP?
I would say like the AOPP puts a technology into your wallet that makes it very convenient to comply with the travel rule. And at the beginning, it's just withdrawing from the exchange. And we don't have this with Swan. And it opens the door. If you have AOPP in there and other users have AOPP, you can sort of put it into the main wallets out there. So, and this is where things becomes really tricky, in my opinion. This is the key thing.
But like, so, I mean, this was the conversation that I had with Carmen and Tony on 53 that Keith basically picked up on, and he listened to that conversation to add, that an explanation of KYC trade-offs to your integration. But my thought process was, and to be perfectly clear, like this was something like I was, AOPP had just kind of happened. Well, actually, AOPP was integrated by Shift Crypto in their Bitbox last year at some point. It just hit the news because Trezor was making a big deal about integrating it. Then they rolled it back. But that's why the debate happened, was Trezor released like a press release that said, we're super excited that we cucked over to regulators. But like that conversation had just basically blown up on Bitcoin Twitter. Projects were pulling out of it. Companies were pulling out of it. And then we had our conversation on Dispatch. And if you think about it, like, so first of all, AOPP is a flawed regulation to begin with, but I don't think that is even that relevant. But the reason it's flawed is because when I withdraw, I can put in someone else's Bitcoin address. With AOPP, I can still do that. I can just have Keith do the AOPP procedure for me, and then it goes to Keith. So it really doesn't solve anything. And obviously, after you receive, you can send it wherever you want to send. So the purpose of that regulation, it doesn't accomplish the purpose, which is this idea of proving ownership of the address. But that doesn't really matter because regulators will continue to push burdensome regulation that doesn't actually improve anything anyway. So I think that is a kind of irrelevant distinction. But ultimately, the idea is try and reduce the plausible deniability of when you withdraw, whether or not you're paying someone or if you're sending to your own storage, because tracking Bitcoin is a probability game. The whole way these surveillance mercenaries, these so-called chain analysis companies, these chain surveillance firms operate is they're basically doing probability analysis on every Bitcoin transaction, trying to decide if ownership has changed, right? Because I could send to myself to a new address over and over again. And they're basically determining, am I sending it to myself or am I sending it to Keith Moritz? Am I buying something with it? Am I sending it to an exchange? They're trying to do the probability of when that Bitcoin changes hands. That's the key to their whole model. And the reverse there is the key to breaking their model is to make those probabilities so low that they really have no idea of whether or not Bitcoin is changing hands. So if you operate under that framework, the framework of reducing plausible deniability, in this integration, or even without this integration, just the way Swan works in general with the auto withdrawal, if it's a reused address or if it's an XPub, the plausible deniability is removed, right? You can basically assume that if someone is using the auto withdraw to a fresh address, and I imagine some kind of data is exchanged because you're getting a kickback that they're using Spectre. So then you really know it's sending 10 new addresses from Spectre every time you load. I mean, it is almost more effective than AOPP in proving that it wasn't a payment to someone else, that it is actually you taking control over that Bitcoin, right?
I don't know. I struggle to see that perspective because, I mean, you're talking about the core offering of Swan is auto withdrawal, right? I mean, auto buy with auto withdrawal, and so
Right.
like the issue is at the Swan level.
Correct.
Like if the concern is that it's a withdrawal versus a spend, that's a problem inherent in the Swan model. And
the auto
you
withdrawal
can
model. It's the auto withdrawal model that it's a problem with.
right, and you can have your concerns with that, but of course balanced against self custody, right? And
Right.
you've got to do something from your on ramps. But from my perspective, so like I said, for existing users, Swan is getting less information. So for existing users, Swan would know that you're communicating through Spectre because the requests are coming through the API instead of their
Right.
web front end. But yeah, from what you do with it from there is up to you. And you had said the ideal is get your auto withdrawal and then coin join it. I think maybe the ideal would be to add some interim random hops in between, right? Some mechanism that says, hey, I've got these different wallets of different types. This one is nested SegWit. This one is a ancient legacy address, and over the course of the next month, do some random hops and then coin join.
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
if regulated exchanges are forced to freeze accounts based off of future coin join usage, then we're in a whole different situation. But as it stands right now, they're not, right? So
yeah.
You shouldn't even have to do that aspect to it.
Yeah, but so I viewed that line of criticism as a conversation about Swan's auto withdrawal model, but I don't know what you do. Like, it's a conversation to have, but like you need on ramps and you need self custody. So, at that point, like I don't know. I just want to send less information to Swan. I want to make it easier for people to take self custody in an automated way that doesn't do dumb things like deposit to the same address all the time or sending an entire XPub. And if the conclusion is nobody should use Swan because of its auto withdrawal model, I just think that's a separate conversation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, I've been publicly discussing Bitcoin under this identity for probably 4 years now, no longer than that. And I'm the first one to admit that my perspectives change and my views change and my opinions change. And I'm proud of that. Like, I evolve, adapt, and learn, and you can never stop learning. Like, be humble enough to know that you don't know everything and you just need to keep going down the rabbit hole. And sometimes on Dispatch, one of the reasons I love Dispatch is it's a free flowing conversation. So sometimes I come to realizations about my own thinking that I hadn't considered in the past. And this is why this Swan conversation is very interesting. Well, first of all, I think it's pretty public that I am an advisor for Swan, but I should probably say that, and I haven't said it yet in this conversation. So there you go. Very, very small equity stake I got as a result of that. 0.1% for full disclosure. So like I happily will tell them to go fuck themselves on air, regardless of my equity stake, just for the record. So to me, the Swan flow was always the ideal KYC flow. If you were going to do KYC, first of all, Swan has been pretty good about disclosing trade-offs of KYC, which once again, I think is the most important thing. They've had me on their podcasts. Me and Gigi wrote up a whole piece on privacy best practices. It's probably the only KYC service that actively has education out there for their users on the dangers of KYC. And the auto withdrawal, I thought was, very positive for users. I still think it's very positive for users because the custodial risk is a real thing. Like I have friends who, they use Coinbase, college friends and stuff. They use Coinbase. They listen to Rabbit Hole Recap. They've listened to me every single time I get drunk, scream at them for using custodial service. And then you just find out over a random conversation that they have like the majority of their Bitcoin is still on Coinbase because they've they just kind of forget about it. The price increases, on Cash App, it's even worse. With Cash App, you have these withdrawal limits that are very, very low. So as the price increases, it's harder and harder to get your Bitcoin off of Cash App. So they get like stuck in this custodial relationship out of a mix of laziness and a mix of oversight and just the Bitcoin price pumping and anxiety about storage. So the auto withdrawal idea, making it as simple as possible to reduce custodial risk, made a lot of sense to me. I think it's interesting that Swan has such a good reputation in the space, has a pretty good reputation in the space, at least as far as KYC on ramps go. But AOPP got blown. Like, don't you think that's interesting that like AOPP got blown the fuck up? But really, in practice, a service offering auto withdrawals actually has way better probability that it's going to your own address. Like, it's interesting.
I don't know. I feel like they're orthogonal. You could AOPP and auto withdrawal on ramp service. It's just one is saying there are these quasi-governmental agencies forcing you to attest to something.
That's the key difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not complying. It's not a compliance thing, right? It's a voluntary thing.
Yes.
But you do agree with me that auto withdrawal proves you own the address more than AOPP does, right?
Boy.
You're not going to give that to me, Keith? What am I missing in that thought process? Because, like I said, with AOPP, you can just sign for me, and I can send it directly to you. But with auto withdrawal, it's clearly me, unless I'm like switching out to your XPub, and I'm just buying.
I could
Bitcoin
manually. Every week I could manually upload a different auto withdrawal address to Swan, and it'll be like, "Yo, I'll pay you in a week."
But that's not the case with the Spectre integration. With the Spectre integration,
no, you're right. That's true.
You would see that, right?
Even with the Spectre integration, you could create a watch-only wallet. It would be dumb, but you could give me your XPub, right? I create a watch-only wallet for your XPub. I connect my Swan auto withdrawal to that, and I'm paying you through Swan every week.
Right. But
right?
yeah,
So it's like,
defaults matter, right? It's a probability game. Defaults matter, and I don't
yeah,
know.
I
There's
mean,
something there.
it might be easier to fake redirect the AOPP, uh, um, but I it's like, I don't know, the differences are just, I don't know. It's like, we're talking about the last like 0.1% of something. Like I don't know. It's not leaping out as a huge issue or a huge like parallel to me.
Maurice, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts here?
I think you're splitting hairs. I think
I just think it's interesting that Bitcoin Twitter, like they just pick odd things to like draw the line on.
yes. I mean, it's a crazy Bitcoin cyber hornets Twitter thing, and you have to, if something like this blows up, you have to remain cool and look what's actually being discussed and wait a couple of days or before something gets completely blown out of proportion. But I think it's an important immune system we have for Bitcoin, that it's reminding people who are working on their projects, if it's Swan, if it's Spectre, if it's Sparrow, anybody else, to say like, oh, AOPP is not really good, or KYC is not the real way, and beat the drum on that no KYC thing, and remind people that they should probably do some home mining or buy no KYC from friends or from the local Bitcoin meetup or whatever, and go that way, because we don't know as we move forward into this information age and the Bitcoinization we see, we don't know how crazy things will become. I mean, the whole Canada thing is going to be really interesting. Also very interesting in Austria is they introduced the capital gains tax on that, and they're putting actually pressure on the exchanges, especially the local shitcoin exchange Bitpanda, to actually report and report and collect the taxes and pay that directly to the tax authorities there. So things are becoming really, really interesting. And I could imagine that, like, especially this conversation with this KYC advisor there and like AML guy in Switzerland, it was interesting that they think really that if you in the future show up and want to spend Bitcoin in, I don't know, Switzerland, and want to buy a car for 20,000 euros or Swiss francs, and you can prove that via travel rule who were the prior owners of these Bitcoins and at which exchange they were bought, you cannot basically use these Bitcoin. So there will be like a KYC Bitcoin world and an AML Bitcoin world, and there will be like this massive dark pool of Bitcoin, which will continuously keep growing. So I don't know how you see this, but you see something like this coming in the US too?
Yeah, I tend to agree with pretty much your prognosis there. I think, there's a lot of Bitcoin proponents, especially recent proponents, I would say like the Sailor school of thought, if you want to give them a name, that think of Bitcoin as purely an investment asset, and are completely fine with using regulated custodians, and think that additional burdensome regulation can provide so-called regulatory clarity. So I think a lot of people in that camp won't be against all of this regulation that is almost definitely coming down the pipeline for companies, specifically custodial companies. Hopefully, not companies that are running a node for their users, but you can see it easily going down that path as well. And I actually think it's so perverse that like people talk about incentives. Incentives are a key aspect of Bitcoin's looking at Bitcoin and looking at the game theory of Bitcoin. There's actually some support there. I think that, if you have burdensome KYC regulation, more identity reporting stuff, the price of Bitcoin actually short term could pump off of that. Half between the fact that people, a lot of people will be cut out from even selling on these regulated exchanges, but also because a lot of the people in the sailor school might think that that regulatory clarity means, you know, Bitcoin's more likely to stay around and they pile in more. And I think I agree with you that the result is going to basically be a bifurcation of the market where you have a proper free market. Some people might call it a black market, but I think a free market. And then you have a controlled, regulated market. But ultimately, I think long term, that regulation becomes so burdensome and so much friction is there. And so many people will get burned. You know, you lose a lot of the properties of Bitcoin. You lose the censorship resistance. You even lose the seizure resistance because, you know, you end up holding it with a custodial party. I could see withdrawals not being allowed or only being able to withdraw to whitelisted addresses and stuff. So you lose that seizure resistance, even if technically you control the private key. If all your holdings are completely known and they're completely tied to your identity and your personal identifiable information, that, you know, then they put a gun to your head. They threaten you with jail time. They threaten you with heavy fines, and then they make you comply. They get a couple people to comply. Most people get scared into it and just comply. But I think ultimately, long term, there'll be so much friction there that the free market Bitcoin will win. Like it'll just be such a better experience. You'll have all the features and the benefits that Bitcoin provides people in terms of censorship resistance, seizure resistance, inflation resistance. Like, you get all those benefits in the proper free market Bitcoin. You get a shitty repackaged version of them in, you know, the regulated, compliant cuckbuck Bitcoin. So I think long term the future is bright. The question is, how many Bitcoiners get burned in that dark period in between? Because that dark period can get really fucking bad, and that's what worries me. And a perfect example is this Canadian shit that's going on right now. Is that you know, Trudeau's government has educated people on the risks of KYC more than any education any of us can do. And why is that? Is because when people's livelihoods are threatened, it is the ultimate motivation. But the problem is that when that point happens, a lot of times it's already too late. Like we talked about earlier, like those people are already burned now. We talked about earlier, you know, it takes time to get comfortable with using sovereign Bitcoin. It takes time to get comfortable with multisig. It takes time to learn how to use privacy best practices, especially with something like CoinJoin, where you have timing analysis and stuff. You need to move slow. You're forced to move slow. So the question becomes, how many people get burned in that immediate process? And I think that's why, as an industry, as a community, we should be trying to build these tools, make them better, improve the education, improve the discourse, so less people get burned, so that dark period isn't as bad.
Yeah, I was thinking today about like these, like imagine you're a trucker with a family and now they block your bank account and all this stuff. And I was just thinking, like, man, like these kind of truckers, like I wish they had they had a moon wallet on their phone and like a little stack there just for this period when they get locked out of the bank account. And I mean, it gives you a bad feeling in the stomach just thinking about this. Like there's so many people who get affected by this and they haven't even understood or heard about Bitcoin and haven't figured out the whole shitcoin stuff. So I think like what we need to do is like push forward on the Bitcoin education and push as hard as we can forward on the fast adoption of self-custody of your keys, your coins, and do the best job we can by providing no KYC tools. But the priority for me personally, coming also from my hardware wallet security side, is like, I want to see fast adoption, your keys, your coins, by the biggest amount of people possible. And if I look around, we have so many people coming into the space over the last 2-3 years, and like friends of yours, and they're still hanging out on fucking Coinbase. Like what the heck's going on? Like it's amazing. And I have the same experiences. I roll my eyes sometimes and think like, guys, you listening to all the Plan B podcasts and all the crazy numbers, and they're all looking still at the fiat gains, and like it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah, they
completely,
like the engagement tweet that says that
Bitcoin with dollars of fiat.
they
it's
like
a
the
complete
engagement
clown show.
tweet that Bitcoin can't be seized, and then meanwhile their Bitcoin's sitting in Coinbase and it can just be seized at will.
Yes, and this is the first people who will get sort of shot. If you're sitting with your coins on a Coinbase or on any exchange, like get the stuff off there. Like if you already
100%.
see it happening in Canada, if they pull this off really now, it's going to be such a massive shit show for so many people. Like it's going to be the biggest Bitcoin advertisement ever. It's going to be the biggest Barbara Streisand effect on Bitcoin ever. It's going to be huge.
It's
And
the
we are
biggest
not-
advertisement since WikiLeaks.
Yes, easily. Or like the darknet market, what's it called? Silk Road. So yes, I mean, and just to talk about numbers here, like these are old numbers. I don't think there are more like 4 or 5 million people using actually hardware wallets, and I don't think there are like more than probably 20,000 people or whatever using a Wasabi, Moon Wallet, or Sparrow, or Spectre. Like probably maybe 40 or whatever. So the people holding the real keys on a Bitcoin only is tiny. And the largest by 4 or 5 million people having a ledger, a Trezor, a hardware wallet. And then if you look at the amount of users on these crypto shitcoin exchanges who are just trading Shiba coin against Yo-Yo coin or whatever, this is the real problem we have. We have like 100 million people we have to move over to your keys, your coins. Don't listen to the shitcoin noise. And maybe these people are already lost. I don't know. But sorry, my rant here. But this is the big thing.
You think there's 100 million people that own Bitcoin, whether self-custody or custodial? That would be your number?
It's even higher.
Okay,
I think
so
the last
what
number, like the old number from the Cambridge research report on these crypto asset users was like 2 years old is the number at least, is 130 million people have KYC'd accounts on exchanges. And so I think the number now is probably 200 or 250 million. And we still fuck around here with 5 million people with hardware wallets. And
so is that what you think? What do you think the number is? So like 200 to 250 million total. What do you think the number is for like people that have 90% of their Bitcoin self-custodied in private Bitcoin wallets?
The number who have most of
their like on hardware wallets or stuff, yeah. At
max 10 million. I would rather say 5. Like the numbers I was my analysis with 2 years ago when I was running some numbers for our business model and doing some research, there was like, and talking to Ledger, talking to Trezor, we had a number, I think 2 million, 3 million hardware wallet users. And through the last 2 years with the education, a lot of people provide and stuff, and the sales numbers, I would say at max 5 million people, 5 million people who have hardware wallets.
We know there's at least 1 million doxed Ledger users.
Yes. And imagine this fucking problem. Like you can go on the darknet, download this list, and I know people who have done it. And then you can go to your city and you're in Berlin or whatever, and then you say, oh, there's Friedrichstraße, whatever, 100, and there's Toby Müller lives there and he has a ledger. Like, I wonder why the guy has a ledger. You buy a ledger hardware wallet or something like this if you have to protect a significant amount of Bitcoin or crypto. So we see like people buy this stuff from like, they start buying a hardware wallet like when they have over 5 or 10,000 in crypto.
And Ledger doesn't even let you buy with Bitcoin, is my understanding. You have to buy with credit card, which is frankly unacceptable. You should, I mean, they're supposed to be a Bitcoin company. You shouldn't have to dox yourself to your surveillance corporate card just to buy.
You build a seed signer, and that's why you build a Spectre DIY. You just order this developer board and you they have a little scanner, and you put in the
So-
cables and the plugs, and that's the cool shit about it.
So let's talk about the Spectre DIY, because I've talked about the Seed Signer many times on this show. Literally the last episode was Seed Signer. I love the project. You guys are a little bit interesting here in that you have this open source software project, and you have this open source open source hardware project, Inspector Do It Yourself. What's the current state of that project? Why should people be interested in it? I think you said you have like a big revamp coming on it earlier in the show.
Yeah. So the long story short is, like, our CTO Stepan is a total monster, and we have like a nice team supporting it. And
he's a beast.
He's amazing. The guy is massive. And so we started actually out building this hardware wallet, and this is actually how Spectre Desktop was coming, because we were looking for a companion app for our hardware wallet. And first we started just with a developer board and a scanner to do QR code based and SD card based stuff. And it's a nice iPhone 4 screen on a developer board. And then we added a smart card reader and a connector board to this. And packaged all this in something what we call Spectre Shield, which is much more for enterprise use. And we really did our homework over the last years, not only building in Liquid into that, but also working on a design that we can ship out as a finished device. Looks a little bit like an old iPhone 4, and has a nice metal casing, and is in the works. We are mostly focused here on high net worth and enterprise usage, and not sure about our retail strategy there, maybe in the future. And so this is where we stand. We are currently testing production models, and hope that we can move to full production maybe later this year. And yes, it's very exciting to see this developing, and we didn't take any shortcuts on the firmware there or anything. We have done a solid job developing this thing for 3 years. And the good thing is, with the new device, you can still use your Spectre DIY, your old one, and you can use the new Spectre, which is coming there, and it's the same firmware. So you have full MIT license, and it's fully free and open source software. So we're very excited about this coming up there.
So users you can build it yourself so it's a higher price point than the Seed Signer. You can build it yourself with off the shelf hardware. It's a bigger screen, higher price point than Seed Signer, or you can buy the pre-built device.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. So like the Seed Signer, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, is about $40, $50 when you build it?
Like 60 now. Inflation.
If you order in bulk, I got it down to $32.
Oh, okay. Well, probably you have a Seed Signer bathtub full of it already.
Hey, don't get into my personal life.
His children haven't taken a bath in 2 weeks because it's filled with Seed Signers.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Seed Signer is great, and we were really happy when Seed Signer came in and did the first stuff, and then a lot of other guys jumped on it, and they used the Mbed library, which is also the library that Stepan built. He wrote and built the Spectre DIY on it, and Seed Signer first did just the casing for us, for Flaxman, and then developed a Seed Signer out of it. And we are coming in at a higher price point. I think the developer board is €60 or $60, and then the scanner is like 30, and then another 10 for the casing and the cables. So you're talking about like $100 there. And it's a really, really nice design, and a really great screen and great user experience. So it's my primary wallet, and I think for me, of course, it's the best wallet in the market. But you can ask the likes of, I don't know, maybe Michael Flaxman what he thinks about this device, and we get some good feedback there. So, but moving forward, like we're really proud on what we did there, and yeah, so we got some nice Bitcoin only stuff coming up, and yeah, awesome. It's great to see how the whole ecosystem is growing, and without the insane without you don't need the insane funding that these shitcoins and shitcoin exchanges have.
They have a lot of
achieve,
funding.
They have a crazy amount of funding, and it's like this is something that's really puzzling to me. Like all these crazy shitcoin projects, they like, if you listen to the Solana stories and what's like how huge these Ethereum and Solana conferences are and what kind of money they throw around, and Bitcoin is still number one. It's building great tools. It has the best and the most passionate people in the space, and it has a clear mission. It's very clear about what it wants. Like the Bitcoin community really knows very clearly what we're working on, and it's just amazing that nobody is even close to competing with Bitcoin. It's amazing, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean the shitcoiners are out there, buying sports arenas. So Crypto.com, no one used Crypto.com. They paid $100 million for their F1 sponsorship for a single year. I mean, it's absolutely insane, the difference in funding. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark. But before we do wrap up, what is your thoughts on Lightning integration Inspector? Is there a roadmap there? Is Lightning never going to be integrated? Will it be integrated in 2 weeks? What is your thought process?
We are not actively working on Lightning. So we think the Lightning space is well alive and kicking and is doing great. We are coming more in from the on-chain custody side and have chosen to work on Liquid. And we are interested in Lightning. We are very passionate about Lightning. Stepan can talk to you about it until your ears bleed. And especially he loves to talk about Bitcoin, Lightning security and Lightning hardware, secure Lightning hardware backends. Because as we see the volume and the network grow in Lightning, there are more and more security questions coming up, especially like where do you put the private keys when you're managing larger amounts of Bitcoin on Lightning. And usually you know better than I, they sit on the node, and this is on the servers, on hardened servers, and this is something which is not very pleasant to think about. So I think in the near future, we will need secure backends for Lightning and specifically built for Lightning also, so that you really can protect these keys in a good way.
100%. I mean, so that's interesting. No plans really.
We don't. We have some HSM plans where we think about the HSM which can support Bitcoin, Liquid, and also Lightning. And we would love to build this, but as we just discussed, funding is the question,
right?
And that's where
And
we
priorities,
want to.
right?
And priorities. You cannot do everything at the same time. You have to prioritize what you want to do. But I think we really did our homework on the Spectre hardware wallet, which is coming up, and we would like to put more resources on the Spectre desktop.
I look forward to playing with the new hardware wallet. I do have the original Spectre DIY. It's a sexy piece of hardware. It was definitely feels like it was way ahead of its time. I do 100% appreciate all the work you and your team do. I mean, we've mentioned already, like the fact that these 24/7 node boxes have, your hot Lightning keys on it. But if you want a really unsettling thought, there are a lot of Lightning nodes that are being run on Canadian VPSs right now.
What?
And depending on how the Canadian government wants to proceed here and how hard they go, that should be a very interesting, painful case study in what is custodial risk and what isn't. Because technically it's not custodial, but if you're running your node on someone else's servers located in a country that's hostile to Bitcoin, it could get pretty messy pretty quickly. So it should be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
The big one I'm thinking of is Luna Node, because Luna Node is like the very low cost, easy option of running BTC Pay server, and they're a Canadian company. But Keith, go.
I'm running my BTC Pay on Luna node, but
There you go. You better move
I
that,
control
bro.
the key. No, I control the key. What can they do? They can seize my node, my BTC Pay, and they can't get any of my funds.
I
Just
hopefully.
just just gotta. I control the key. What are they gonna do? They can subpoena me and throw me in jail, but they can't seize it from me.
Keith, where's your
But no,
key?
quick note
Is your key
on
also on the
Wait,
server?
what
Wait,
key? What
no.
key you control?
It's running off of a watch only XPub.
No, that's the on-chain portion, not the Lightning portion.
Yeah. No, I can't deal with Lightning. I
Oh,
can't.
okay. But I
I don't
meant
have the brain
specifically.
space.
I meant
Yeah.
specifically Lightning hot
Right.
wallets on
Right.
Luna.
But no, for Lightning integration, I think it's such a big space. There's so much to learn that it would just be a huge time suck. But as Moritz had mentioned earlier, it was basically 80% of the Swan integration was to build a flexible extensions layer into Spectre, and Swan just happened to be the first. You can think of it as a plugin into Spectre. So I'd be really interested to hear ideas of like what would make sense as an extension that would connect like LND to Spectre. I don't run a Lightning server, so I'm it's been like 2 years since I've played with it, so I'm pretty ignorant. But those like on-chain touch points that LND might have, maybe it makes sense to tie that to a wallet inspector, and we can have a simple extension that facilitates that communication back and forth. That is, depending on what needs to be done, but something like that should be fairly straightforward, where you're just saying, hey, wallet, give me a new on-chain address, or hey, let me check my, I don't know, my what do they call it? My submarine swap out, loop out on chain. That should be straightforward.
I dig it. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what extensions get added to Spectre going forward.
Yeah, and
Should be
actually,
interesting.
I did tweet out my trivial slush pool history importer as the second extension
Oh, Slush
for
would be
Spectre.
great.
Yeah, so I call it trivial because like I think it's awesome. I think I love the idea of seeing little slush pool icons in my Spectre transaction history. But it's trivial because slush pool just doesn't allow you to do
Right.
really deep integrations. So literally all you can do is download your existing payout history, and then what this Spectre extension does, it just looks at your wallet and it looks at that CSV file and says, hey, I recognize that address, and it just marks it as a slush pool deposit. So it doesn't do much, but it was kind of a proof of concept, and it'll be neat to see those little icons show up.
Are you guys talking to anyone at Slush? I mean, it'd be awesome. Right now, Slush has automatic withdrawals, but it's a fixed address. It'd be awesome if we had like the Swan type of integration, but with Slush, where it went to a new address every time.
Yeah, I mean their API, the there's a gaping hole around anything related to payout addresses or history or anything, and I assume that's intentional, that they just don't want to go there. But if anyone has connections into Slush, I would love to have that API endpoint. I think that would be amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna start that conversation after we get off, because I think that would be absolutely fantastic, particularly to home miners who tend to use Slush. It is my favorite mining pool. Okay, guys. I mean, it's been 2 hours and 7 minutes. I think this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I like to wrap it up with final thoughts. Keith, final thoughts.
None. Thanks for having us. Great conversation.
I love you, Keith.
Well,
Thanks for coming on. Moritz, final thoughts.
final thought is stay paranoid, do your self-custody, run your node, and don't comply with any of this BS people throw at you. And that's my spirit at the moment, I would guess.
Awesome. Thank you, Moritz. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to our guests. I appreciate both of you and your work. It is truly appreciated. If you want to support Spectre development and you're a programmer, go to their GitHub, start reviewing things, contribute. I know they appreciate it. If you're not a programmer, go to donate.spectre.solutions and send them some sats. They really do. It really does go a long way. I know Keith, you have a donation page too, don't you? What is your donation page specifically?
Yeah, I'm just btcpay.keithmukai.com.
Boom. Go to btcpay.keithmukai.com. Send them some sats. It really does go a long way. I try and model Dispatch off of these open source projects. As always, we don't have ads or sponsors. So if you do appreciate the content here, please consider sending me some sats as well. What else? I want to thank all the freaks for joining us. I hope you found this conversation productive. Special big thanks to the freaks who joined us in the live chat and contributed to the discussion. Once again, you can find the link to that at citadeldispatch.com and then clicking that Citadel chat link. Maurice, I forgot to remind you, but we end every dispatch with a music video. So you can either listen with us or you can leave while it's going. Love you, freaks.
I'll hang in.
Thanks, guys.
You know it flows both ways. We dig it out for the new creation, from where it all takes shape. The minerals give me information, just like a sun gives rain. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Oh, under pressure, falling strong. Pressure. We come alive with the wave. Pressure. Forgive me when they say pressure. A brighter light is awake now. Under pressure, falling strong. Not selling no liquid, wobbling. Yes, the limits get lifted. Not selling no liquid, wobbling. Yes, the limits get lifted.
There's nothing in this universe more beautiful than this. Okay? Nothing.
Pressure, oh, under pressure, forging stone. Pressure, we come alive with the wave. Pressure, forgive me when they say pressure. A brighter light is awake now. Under pressure, forging stone. Not selling no liquid, wobbling. Yes, the limits get lifted. Not selling no liquid, wobbling. Yes, the limits get
Appreciate you, freaks. Hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Rabbit Hole recap this week will be on Friday because Marty's traveling. I'll see you on Tuesday for another dispatch. I have to figure out what that conversation is going to be. I haven't figured out yet. What else? If you're an open source developer, if you contribute to open source projects in the Bitcoin space, I help facilitate an open source ticket program for developers, for contributors of those projects. You don't even have to be a developer. You could be someone who, as long as you did a commit before October 1st for those projects, you get a free ticket to Bitcoin 2022 in Miami. If you go to b.tc/conference/open-source, not the best domain, but if you just type in b.tc space open source into DuckDuckGo, it comes up. You just press apply. Literally, just I'm manually approving those people. So if you weren't aware of that, consider doing that. And if you aren't consider starting. But regardless, there is a discount code open source, which gets you 21% off. Do not share that on Twitter. Otherwise, they will disable it because it is the highest discount you can get. I love you all. Stay humble, stack sats. Cheers.